Impacting blood donations. It's the worst shortage in more than a decade.
And it has forced the Red Cross to declare a national emergency, something it has never done before. Chase Howell is here with a look at the local impact. Chase?
The local Red Cross is in critical need of both blood and platelet donations. The head of the Western New York chapter says they typically like to have a 5-day inventory of blood, and right now are working with a 1-day supply. If things don't turn around, it could begin to impact patient care. A familiar but serious call to action: donate blood.
It was through blood transfusions that I'm able to survive.
The American Red Cross declaring its first national blood crisis in the U.S.
So we're used to shortages. They typically happen in the summer months and the winter months. What's special about this one is the fact that we haven't been able to rebound. In September, we went out on an appeal, and we haven't been able to build up our inventories to meet hospital needs. So it's just been ongoing.
The Red Cross says challenges have been brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic, including staffing shortages and even supply chain issues.
Since COVID started, we've seen about a 10% of decrease of our donors, and we're also seeing a decrease of our youth donors because we aren't in all the high schools and colleges like we used to be. So we are encouraging our young donors to come out as well. We want everyone to become lifelong donors.
Western New York's regional director for the Red Cross says 38% of the population is eligible to donate blood, but only 5% are actually doing it.
There is no substitute to blood. We can't make it. We can't manufacture it. Doctors will have to make some tough calls, postponing surgeries and just making sure they're meeting the most life-threatening patients.
Michael Gamilla received countless blood and platelet transfusions during his battle with leukemia.
I think most people just think of blood is necessary to treat people that have accidents, like car accidents, because there's a lot of loss in blood, but they're not aware that for some people, it's actually a maintenance thing for their treatments, like cancer or any other blood diseases that's out there. So it's not just blood is not needed. It's not only needed for emergencies, but also for maintenance for a lot of people.
82-year-old Dick Tucker has been donating every month since 1968 and understands why the pandemic is behind the national blood crisis.
I can understand where it's coming from because a lot of people probably can't. And a lot of people are probably afraid of the COVID stigma and that may have affected their ability, perhaps in their minds. But I haven't had COVID.
The Red Cross's Western New York region will see 66% of donation appointments go unfilled over the next month.
The state is again changing the rules involving schools. Good afternoon. I'm Doug Embledge.
And I'm Janae Ryan. The new guidance impacts students who stay after school for sports or other activities. As 13 WHAM's Jane Chaco reports, some of them will now need a booster to take part. Jane?
Doug, Jenny, the state guidance says if students are exposed to COVID, they can stay in school if they're vaccinated. And if they're eligible, they have to get the booster shot in order to take part in after-school activities. While the health of students and staff is the #1 priority for schools, updated guidance from the state health department complicates things.
I think the guidance probably in many ways confuses many people. You know, we've got kids who have been exposed who are back in social studies class today, but potentially they might not be eligible to come to practice today.
Hilton Athletic Director Mike Geruzzi says he is flooded with calls from families asking if their kids can play.
You know, we got to take a look at an athlete, figure out if they were exposed. So we find out they were exposed, you know, theoretically you're trying to figure out when their second shot was.
New guidance released this week says students who test positive for COVID can return to sports with clearance from their primary care provider after 10 days of quarantine. If they were exposed, the rules are different. Students who are eligible for a booster shot must be boosted to attend clubs and sports. Students not yet eligible can still participate. Dave Hennessy, a track coach in the Penfield School District, says the rules are different for after school because not all students wear their mask correctly all the time.
Sometimes when they're racing, and the mass comes down a lot more than it should. It's going to fall naturally because when you're running, it's going to bounce and it's going to come down.
With the new state guidance, he expects to rearrange his roster a lot more this season.
We had several people who returned that I haven't seen in a week. Some of them, it was because they were ill, or some of them was because it was in the family. And, you just got to go with the flow.
Now, if a student is positive for COVID, they have to isolate at home for 5 days, regardless of their vaccination status. And local counties are no longer contact tracing, so families are told to fill out a form online to know when they can leave quarantine and isolation.
New York State is promising to correct a mistake, replacing nearly 200,000 faulty masks that were sent to Monroe County. Good evening, I'm Doug Embledge. 13 WHAM first reported on the concerns over what were supposed to be high-grade KN95 masks to protect essential workers, including teachers, from COVID-19. Well, 13 WHAM's Carla Rogner tells us those masks were not what they were expecting and not what they needed. Carla?
Yeah, Doug, the state sent about 340,000 masks to Monroe County in late December. Nearly half of those were paper thin and not the KN95 masks essential workers were hoping for.
When Sarah Mullahusky first received what was supposed to be a KN95 mask, something was off. She reached out to 13 WHAM and shared this photo.
It didn't really have a good fit. There was no nose wire. The ear loops were large, and it didn't seem like it had many layers to it. I mean, I held it up and I could see through it and see my fingers.
It left her wondering how this flimsy mask could possibly protect her in her second grade classroom.
I did not feel safe wearing that.
Just 3 days after our interview and after Monroe County leaders complained, the State Department of Health is correcting the error. It's telling Monroe County to stop giving out these masks and that new ones will be shipped out to replace them. The masks in question came from a Chinese manufacturer. One essential worker telling 13 WHAM the masks he received didn't even fit his face. This mix-up comes as health officials stress the increasing importance of wearing a high-grade mask like a KN95 to protect against the more contagious Omicron variant. The Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services is looking into what happened.
The state is planning to send new KN95 masks to Monroe County, along with Madison and Niagara counties, which also each received about 30,000 of these ineffective masks. No word on when those could arrive.